Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the second trailer for Andor Season 2. So, we're going to be breaking this down a little bit differently than normal because I need help. I have our friend who's trapped in the television but doesn't know it, so please don't tell him, Colton Ogburn, here to help me out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this trailer, not necessarily frame by frame, because there's not new reveals in every frame, but we want to explain some of the visuals that we're seeing here. Now, in case you don't know, Andor Season 2 picks up not where the first season left off. It's every single arc of the show. There's going to be 4 arcs total, cover a different year of the Rebel Alliance. Season 1 took place 5 years before, which is also the first year for Star Wars Rebels. Season 2, the first arc, is going to be about in the first 3 episodes, that's year 2, basically counting down until we get to Rogue One and the Battle of Yavin. So what we're going to see is the real blood, sweat, and sacrifice that led to Luke Skywalker being able to step in and take all the credit like we saw in the original trilogy. So Colton, what I'm going to do here, let's just go through some of the shots of this trailer because there's some things that we saw in the first trailer that have now been illuminated. By the way, buddy, how you feeling today? What's going on?
I'm feeling great. Excited to talk about Andor.
Yeah, I was about to ask, I'm not hyped about how they're releasing it. I think even asking Star Wars fans to watch 3 hours of television a week and then asking us to ask people to watch our Easter egg videos is really tricky. Yeah. But, this is the best Star Wars, since Empire Strikes Back. I don't think that you could... I know you're a Revenge of the Sith fan, but, come on. Andor Season 1, for me, stood heads and shoulders above everything else that Disney has done.
From just a quality standpoint, yes, I would agree that Andor definitely the best Star Wars since the original trilogy. Yeah.
So the first shot of the trailer is something we saw a glimpse of in Episode 1, or in the first trailer, but we didn't know what it was. So it's stormtroopers walking into this plaza, and now we know this is the Gorham Massacre. This is a seismic event in Star Wars history. So the Gorham Massacre, in Season 1, we heard Mon Mothma talking about how the Empire was treating the people of Gorham. And we know from the show Rebels that after the Empire committed some massacre, Mon Mothma gave a speech on the Senate floor, which I think we're going to see in this show, that then made the Emperor declare her an enemy of the people. Then she formally left the Senate, resigned, and became the leader of the Rebel Alliance. This shot, and all the shots in this plaza with these really cool looking columns, that's the Gorham Massacre.
Wow.
That we're going to see in this show. And like I said, this is like the Boston Massacre for the Revolutionary War. This is like one of the major flashpoints that we've only ever heard about. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
And where did you say we saw that massacre? It was in a book, or which book was it?
We've never seen it.
Or heard it mentioned, rather, sorry.
Yeah, it's been mentioned in the show Rebels.
In Rebels, okay.
And you can see Gorham, like a wide shot. It's a beautiful looking place. Mm-hmm. It's in the valley. It's this sprawling city with these really cool angular lines. So I don't remember where it's placed, but I don't think it's like an outer rim planet. It looks to me like it's mid-rim or core, which means it's like the Empire was always treating the outer rim but now they're cracking down on these inner world planets, these cultural centers, for instance, Alderaan, and that's what really led a bunch of planets to join the Alliance, Alderaan's destruction.
Well, that's one of the great things about Andor. Not only do we get to see the wider Rebel Alliance doing their rebellious things, but we also get to see how evil and dictatorial the Empire is. So I think Season 2 is going to show us a lot of that.
And in subtle ways, too, the casual way that, Imperial officers commit evil and then just sip their coffee. Like on Aldhani. They're doing ethnic cleansing, but they still have to-go cups. Yeah.
In this very, very first shot of the trailer, where is he in that hallway? Because it looks like Camino to me. Am I right about that? Or
it looks like Camino, but, Camino was destroyed by this point.
Yeah, true.
Maybe Mount Tantus, but I don't think.
All right.
I don't think Tony Gilroy is going to go anywhere near any of the clone Filoni stuff. I think his interest is they're building the A-bomb. Yeah. They're building the super weapon.
Well, and in this next shot, we have the sirens that we hear in A New Hope and that we also heard in Rogue One. And we hear that throughout the trailer, which is to me is saying hey, we're on the path to Rogue One. Like you were saying, it's going to lead up right to that moment of when Rogue One starts. So that's exciting.
Yeah, which leads us, of course, right up to A New Hope. Now, the next shot in here, there's a cool looking shot of Coruscant. It looks like Deidre Miro, who I saw that actor years ago in an off-Broadway show. She's amazing, and she brought so much cool subtlety to this part. Later in the trailer, there's a shot of her where she is freaking out, right? She's having a panic attack. And the Deidre mirror that we saw in season 1 would not have done that until that last episode. Do you remember when the mob dragged her away?
Yeah.
And she suddenly, was having this panic attack till Cyril saved her. I think she hasn't recovered from that because, hey, it's the Empire. Keep calm and carry on, you know?
I'm glad you're pointing out that was a panic attack, because at first I was like, oh, is she getting force choked? Like the way she was grabbing at her neck. But then I realized, no, the tightness of her collar is actually like bothering her because of the anxiety attack she's having. Yeah.
Right. And we do in this trailer start to see characters from season 1 who never met crossing over. The next shot is Cassian talking to Clea. Clea is Luthen's assistant who worked with him in the art shop. There's some really interesting things with her later in the trailer I want to talk about. Then we get shots of the Empire occupying this farm with Brasso, right? Now the farm, we've pointed out before, looks like it could be Lothal. We know that Brasso and Bix and hopefully the little droid from season 1 are all there. And it looks like Cassian rescues them. There's also a point in the trailer where we see Cassian talking to Bix and saying, we have to win. And I think what's happening there is like, after the events of Andor season 1, they were able to go off. He just wanted them to be safe while he put himself at risk and joined the rebellion. Now I think that the Empire, like they do, they've infiltrated this planet, maybe they've arrested them, and now I think he's trying to recruit them into the cause. What do you think?
That sounds right to me, especially with, like, you know more probably about Rebels than I do, but with how the storyline would line up. Did you say these first 3 take place during the first season of Rebels? Is that what I understood?
The first season took place during the first season of Rebels,
okay.
which is great because you get to see, like, you know, it's two very different seasons of things happening at the same time.
I'd be really happy to see if they tie in Lothal. Like, I think that's one of the things I love most about current Star Wars is the way that they are tying together, like, the originals, the prequels, the animated shows, the books, like tying it all together into one big universe. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do it really well. You would think that kind of thing would kind of stink of like corporate overlordship, but Lucasfilm in particular has like a really good system and story team in place.
And
track of that.
And they're walking a good line of, you know, sometimes I think they fall into the trap of making this huge galaxy feel small, but I think with this, by having like different things mentioned and touched on, and like, I don't know, it's like they're walking this line between having it be connected but not too connected. Yeah.
And there's a few other things in this I think, oh God, I'm just really excited about. So Saw Gerrera, if you watch the Clone Wars, if you watch Rebels, and even if you watch the Bad Batch, he's a terrorist. Like, he's somebody who really would not have fit into Luke Skywalker's rebellion, right? So seeing him have a larger role, like he was in 2 episodes last time, he mostly talked. Here we see him on Jeddah. Like, this is talk about coming up to Rogue One. And it wouldn't surprise me if this is the Empire first coming to Jeddah. And remember, they wanted to go there because of the Jedi Temple, Harvest Kyber Crystal, because everything leads up to the Death Star.
Right, because in Rogue One, by the time we get to Jeddah, they're already occupying the planet, right? They're already occupying it. We have to see stormtroopers and all that. And yeah, I'm excited to see, what's this actor's name? It's completely escaping me. Who
Forrest
plays
Whitaker?
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker. I love Forrest Whitaker, so I'm glad that we're getting to see more of his character. Yeah.
And now they've added the mask. He didn't have the breathing mask in season 1, and we know he gets it. So like, hopefully we get to see him. It's just there's so much they have to pack into these episodes. But I would love to see how he got that injury. I would love to see Saw Gerrera, because in Rebels, when Mon Mothma declares the Rebel Alliance, Saw Gerrera mocks her and says, "You're not going to go far enough. You're going to fail." You know, like, we're really getting all these little internal divisions within the Rebel Alliance and show that it wasn't in the movies. It's very clean. It's like there's a rebel, there's good guys, there's bad guys, but this is like all the messiness attached to that. Yeah. And just moving ahead, look, you know what I always say, Colton, I want to keep politics out of our YouTube channel and where it belongs, in our Star Wars movies.
So we can talk about it on our YouTube channel.
Exactly, yeah. So let's talk about what we see here. In the first season, there was that great shot of Mon Mothma giving a speech, people shutting off their little Senate podiums and saying, "Long live the Empire." What are we seeing here in this scene?
Well, at first it looked like she was giving a speech to an empty Senate, but the more I zoom in, you can actually see that there are senators in their little floaty pods throughout the Senate. But I would not be surprised at all if her speech is falling on deaf ears, kind of like in season 1. It's very reminiscent of even in like our real world politics. We've seen Bernie Sanders give a speech to Congress, and it's literally to an empty room. Like, he's talking about this issue he cares a lot about. It's important. And then you cut to the wide shot. Nobody's paying attention. So kind of here, what we're seeing with Mon Mothma is we know where this story ends up. And she is trying to warn people and do things in a more, I don't know, civilized, like within the system type thing with her speech and trying to appeal to people's like better halves. And then you have like the more terroristic side of the rebellion. So I think we're getting to see that line drawn in the sand, and eventually that line has to be crossed.
Yeah, and Luthen's the go-between between them too.
Yeah.
Like he's the person who can not only physically talk to Saul and Mon Mothma, but his tactics fall somewhere in between. Go ahead.
I love seeing prequel era stuff like the Senate in this like original trilogy setting. I love seeing this merging of the worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've always wondered. I mean, we always heard, okay, Tarkin comes in and says the Senate's dissolved, the last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away, and for decades we wondered, well, what did that look like? Why was that? And now we're seeing like it's not like the Emperor declared the Senate's dead when it was thriving. He declared it was dead when it was dead. It was death by 1,000 cuts. And then we get a few shots just to check in on some characters. We see Vel and Senta, I think. Might not be Vel, actually. It's in the shadows. It might be Clea. And they're looking at different patrols going through. Pretty sure that's Vel, though. Yeah. Different shots of dialogue. We see a little bit more of, like, maybe Lothal and how the people are having a great time. They're celebrating. Or not celebrating, just, like, living their life. Cutting to Bix and Cassian recruiting her. Her arc was really interesting in that first season because she was just a person who wanted to work on Ferrix. And then when the Empire tortured Han, he shrugged it off pretty fast. So did Leia. The Empire, they kept it vague in those movies on purpose. In Andor, we were told, oh, you're going to listen to the death rattles of children for hours on end layered on top of each other. So when she is so messed up at the end of that, you feel it. You know why. So seeing her recovered and then joining the rebellion, I think, is a nice arc for her throughout this whole thing.
And Andor, it is just such an adult-themed show. Like, it is showing, like you said, just the war-torn nature of what's happening in the galaxy right now. Whereas, like, in the Skywalker saga, it's a little bit more, like, fantastical-type storytelling. We are, like, literally in the trenches when it comes to Andor. We're seeing the pain and the evils of the Empire. So, yeah, I think you made a great point there.
Do you recognize the Citadel here that's in the mountains?
No, I see like a Imperial shuttle on the landing dock there.
Oh, that's cool. So some muckety muck has come in there. Do you think we might get a Darth Vader cameo in this?
You know, I would love a Darth Vader cameo. I'm always down for Vader, but I don't want it to feel shoehorned. Does that make sense? So,
yeah, it does. We are getting, like, as we'll talk about in a second, Ben Mendelsohn's back. You know, he's going to play Orson Krennic, which makes sense because we're building toward the Death Star. If you follow the books and the novels and the games, you know Darth Vader was busy during this time. Yeah. He wasn't necessarily concerned with the Rebel Alliance the entire time. He was going after remnants of the Jedi Order and hunting them down. Yeah. So, I don't know. The fact that he's in Rebels, there is a character, though, who really should be in this show, and that's Fulcrum, a.k.a. Ahsoka Tano, who during this time was talking to different Rebel cells and organizing them. Maybe later on she fills in for Luthen after he dies or something, but if we're going to have a Jedi cameo in this, that's the only one that I think makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Ahsoka just pops up everywhere except for where she's supposed to be. So, yeah, I guess it would be nice.
Dude, don't get me started. The fact that she was apparently around during the rebellion but didn't help out, I can't. That's for our podcast. Anyways, we get a shot of ISB headquarters. Very cool. Orson Krennic. Again, he's going to take, like, if you read the novels and the shows and stuff, you know that, like, Orson Krennic was fighting for every scrap of funding for the Death Star. And I actually think that events like Aldhani probably contributed to him getting way more funds because it showed the Rebel Alliance as a real credible threat, so they need this super weapon. There is a mistake in this trailer, though. We see the droid. I'm pretty sure this is K2SO because he attacks an Imperial officer. The Arabesh behind him is backwards, I think, or some of it looks backwards. And I believe it reads, I wrote this down, Towers, Tom, Kiru. It's really tough to see. But I think that they inverted the shot, and I'm not sure why, because the R is backwards. Yeah, I don't know. But the E isn't. It's one of these things. I bet it's completely different in the show.
Well, you know,
let's not focus too much
the Empire, they're not very bright. You know, they just can't get their letters right in the right position.
Yeah, exactly. There's no points for spelling.
I love watching him yeet this guy over the leg.
Yeah, me too. I've rewound it a few times. It is a lot of fun. Then we get Clea saying they're building a weapon. I think she's saying this to Luthen. Now, this is a really interesting thing because until they acquired the Death Star plans in Rogue One, the Rebellion did not technically know what kind of weapon they were building, right? Or they knew what kind when they got that until Jen Erso told them. They did not know what the weapon was. It was something that it was such a tight secret that the Empire actually committed genocide against the Geonosians who built the original structure of it. Because they wanted to keep it secret. That's how intense of a security. So just for her to find out, oh, it's a weapon, which actually they did find out in Rebels. They didn't know what kind of weapon, but they were able to find that out when they went to Geonosis. They just didn't know what kind. So you never know. We might get some little crossovers to that show in this. Might get a Harrison Dula cameo.
Am I right that Cassian, he was a separatist, right? When he grew up in this war, he was a separatist. And in Attack of the Clones, like you're saying, on Geonosis, we saw Dooku, he has that little red hologram of the Death Star. So you would think that the separatists would have some kind of knowledge of the Death Star. So it would be cool if we see him comb through and find old files from the Clone Wars.
I don't know if he was a separatist. They definitely found Marva and his dad did find separatist wreckage that they captured that went on the planet where they found him. I don't know if they were ever separatists.
Well, and we know he's been in the war since he was a kid, which would have meant he was fighting the Republic before he was fighting the Empire. Is kind of how I took that.
They recruited him to. When he was in juvie, they basically forced him into military service. The Empire did.
Gotcha.
All right, so then we get the shot of Orson Krennic. We saw at the very end, the post-credit scene in Season 1, we saw that the units they were building on in the prison planet on Narkina were basically just little things to hold together the solar panel of the Death Star. And we finally see that assembled in Rogue One. Here's Orson Krennic overseeing his masterpiece. And I'm glad Orson Krennic is involved in this season a little bit more because, again, if the whole thing is about building toward the Death Star, then it makes sense that he would be present to bring it to its final stages. And that's going to make watching Rogue One so much more fun to see because in Rogue One, Tarkin steps right in and swipes it from him and takes all the credit.
Yeah, it makes much more sense to have Krennic than it would, like from a story standpoint, it makes more sense than having Tarkin or Vader or any of those other villains. So I've heard some chatter oh, they're just putting him in there, to it's a gimmick. But I'm like, no, it calls for his character to be there. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Now there is a shot here. I think these are Saw's forces because I recognize tubes. Who's the guy in white or the white furry guy?
The big furry guy. Almost. He is from Rogue One. His name is, I looked it up, Moroff, Moroff, and it says that his species is a gigaran. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a Talls because that's a species in the that guy in the cantina who makes the sound. Okay, and then we get a few action shots. There's nothing in here. There is an interesting shot of Luthen where he's looking at his wig line, which makes me wonder if an Imperial looked twice at him and he's wondering, oh, was my wig slipping? The guy's not going to make it out. We had some fun fan theories last season, was he a Jedi? A lot of things about him, like the Kyber crystal. He gave up everything. They kind of line up with he could be a Jedi, but I don't know. But I definitely think he's going to be gone this season.
I hope
we get
not.
A quick shot of, but he's not going to make it past.
No, I'm saying I hope he's not a Jedi.
Oh, I hope not either. We get, I think his name is Willman. He was the guy who threw the bomb in episode 1 or episode 12 after they killed his dad.
This guy's shooting. I'm glad he didn't do a little spin before taking this shot. I hope he didn't.
See, but that's what I love about Star Wars. It's a restaurant. There's a lot of things on the menu. You can have silly stuff like Book of Boba Fett where people spin around, or you can have this guy just taking an actual shot and being nervous when he does it. Couple other things. We get this great thank you for the thumbnail. Orson Krennic smiling at the camera. We get shots of the Chandrilla wedding between Mon Mothma's daughter and the gangster's son, which, again, one great thing about this show, you mentioned earlier about how it doesn't make the galaxy feel small. And even just getting to see these locations and these customs, when really it's a banking story about them marrying off to I love that kind of stuff because then you're giving food for other writers down the line. What did happen to Mon Mothma's daughter after she joined the rebellion,
This wedding is giving me, have you seen the deleted, look who I'm asking, have you seen the deleted scenes from Attack of the Clones when they spend time on with Padme's parents, her and Anakin?
Which one's Attack of the Clones?
This...
I've seen it. They're terrible deleted scenes. They needed to leave
Yeah.
them out. It's like, oh yeah, I'm unpacking my suitcase. It's very normal stuff and very boring. Very not Star Wars. So, what it reminds you of that though?
Yeah, just the aesthetic of it, you know, kind of the elite, like royalty, like not very involved in what's going on. And we know that that's kind of the situation that she finds herself in with her being like a upper class, like senator, and the people that are around her not being aware of really what's happening with the Empire. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of small details from season 1, just how they like invented this religion and this tradition where the girls have their hair tightly braided and they have that little thing safe in the braid of the old ways. I just love how this show is layering all these different cultures. It's like watching Lord of the Rings, how they like made different types of weapons for each species.
Yeah.
So then we get a few shots of the Gorham massacre. I noticed they're not really showing the massacre itself in the trailer. We're seeing like the aftermath of it and then the riot that led up to it.
I hope it's brutal.
But even then, me too, I want to see these people suffer for what they've done to the Empire. If you look at the banners, though, the Empires look like mazes, which is interesting because if you go to the wide shot, you see that everything in their city is built like layered and structured. It almost makes me think like, did they put that much design detail in it? Like if this is their city, what does their emblem look like? Is it based on the design of the city? It's very cool to see how they've put that together. We got Cyril, who looks like he's moved up in the Empire, like maybe he's actually working at ISB.
And doesn't Cyril, he eats a lot of cereal, right?
Loves cereal, and we still don't know what was in his private box.
Yeah, cereal. Great.
And we get Cyril looking at, giving a speech to some droids that are like K2SO. I forget the model number of those, actually. And then we get a few cool shots. We got the wedding. We got our friend Qyburn from Game of Thrones still leading the ISB. Clea crying, might be from Luthen's death. And then various action shots. And just we end with this sequence that looks like it's going to be a showstopper where Luthen steals an experimental TIE fighter. And as we saw in the last trailer, he uses it to save his people. So that's every shot. Yeah, that's every shot that we saw in this. Again, like, I'm jazzed, man. The more connections they can give in an organic way to Star Wars Rebels, because I'm not a big Rebels fan, so anything they can do to make that show even more interesting. I don't think we'll see anything from Mandalore. I think they're going to stay focused on what they introduced in season 1. But what are you looking forward to most about this show?
Well, like we said off the top, this is some of the best Star Wars that has been made since the original trilogy. And where did you say they were filming this? They're filming it not in the US, right? They're filming it over in the UK, I think. They're kind of like secluded, like kind of from everything else. And you can tell that it just has like this very different feel than some of the other Star Wars shows. So I'm just looking forward to that quality, that attention to detail, and them telling a good Star Wars story without feeling the need to be like, oh, this is Star Wars. Like, did you get that reference? Did you see that? No, they're just telling like this war-torn story in a Star Wars world. So I'm very excited for the show. I also love that in the trailer, there's a line where they say, we're going to be crushed. And I loved how that foreshadows when Tarkin says we're going to crush the rebellion and how they're on this path to Rogue One. Very nice touch. It's just little stuff like that that makes the show so good.
Well, I'm super excited. I think that Andor, like I said, is the best Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back. I hope the second season ends well. And you can let us know what you think of the trailer and season 1 down in the comments below, or at me and Colton on our socials, or on our free-to-join Discord server, or just down in the comments. So for ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.
I'm Colton Ogburn.
And be sure to subscribe and smash that bell for alerts.